Welcome to the Girls Marketing Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things marketing and the perfect backing track to your workday. Every week, we get up close and personal with marketers revolutionising the industry so you can learn from the best in the game. From the latest marketing trends to building a successful marketing career, no topic is off limits. At Girls in Marketing, we champion progress, inspire change, and encourage women to take the marketing world by storm. Check out our website and membership to learn more and get involved, as we'd love to welcome you to our inner circle. Right, let's dive into another episode together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Girls in Marketing podcast. 2 out of 3 people recently said that they would take a pay cut for a better work-life balance. So we thought today we would chat all about work-life balance. Now, I want to open the floor and ask everyone, what do we think? What do we currently would say our work-life balance is? Because I'd love to unpick that a little bit and kind of chat about how we kind of make our work-life balance better.
I feel like now more than ever, I'm really struggling to switch off, purely because I feel like I just feel like my brain is constantly on. So I really have to try and achieve some sort of work-life balance. I really have to actively go in and think, right, I really have to consciously think, now I'm switching off. Whereas I think work-life balance, it comes in ebbs and flows for me. Sometimes I feel like I prioritise work more. Sometimes I feel like I prioritise having more of a life outside. I think it's not always 50-50 all the time. And I think I wouldn't necessarily want it to be 50-50 all the time, because I think sometimes you're more motivated with work, for example. Sometimes you think, there's a lot of social events, for example, at the moment. So I want to kind of spend more time doing that. So I think it just comes in ebbs and flows. I feel like for me, a work-life balance of 50-50 all the time isn't always achievable. But I also think it depends on your priorities yourself, because I think a lot of the time, sometimes I'll think, right, this month, for example, I really want to smash out the gym. So I can't get up and start work straight away because I want to prioritise the gym. It just all comes into your prioritisation and what you see as what you want to prioritise. And I think that feeds into your work-life balance, because I think then by doing them things and by prioritising what you yourself want to prioritise, you feel like you're getting more back from that, and you feel like you are achieving more of a work-life balance. So I think it just depends on your priorities.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think work-life balance looks the same for anyone. I think it's entirely dependent on how much you see work as being work and how much you and how separate those things are. For some people, work-life balance might be massively 85% work and less focus on the outside of work, but that's because maybe they're building a business or something like that, and so it just looks different for them. Maybe they're at a point in their lives where they're really focused on progressing in their careers. Maybe they don't see it as work's being while I'm in the office, life's outside. I just think it's so different, and you can't really put a label on. And I think sometimes when organisations say things you'll have a great work-life balance, it's great that they acknowledge that that's something they want to give to their employees, but I don't think an organisation can give a blanket work-life balance to everyone, because it does look different for everybody, depending on what stage you're at in your life. I can only speak to my experience, and at the moment I'm kind of in a period of my life where I've just kind of started a family, so my work-life balance looks a little bit different than it did before. My priorities outside of work are a little bit different, but I also think work-life balance can kind of refer to not just the hours that you're actually working, but how much mental capacity you're left with when you're not working. So even if you're not physically working, how much of your mental kind of space is still taken up by the thought of what's happening with work, what you've potentially got to do the following week. That's still, work for me. That still falls into the work side of that balance, because, you might not actually be actively working, but if you're still thinking about everything you've got to do, you've got too much on, you've got too much pressure, you're not being supported, then I don't think that kind of really gives you a good work-life balance either. So I think it's definitely hard to get, and I think that businesses and managers need to be really kind of in tune with what their individual employees are looking to achieve from a work-life balance, and try and give that as best as possible.
Do you have that burning desire to create a website for a new idea but don't have any coding experience? Don't worry, I've got you. Hostinger is a sponsor of today's episode, and they have created an AI website builder tool allowing anyone who wants to take their idea online to do so with zero coding skills. Just write 3 sentences to sum up what you're looking for, and Hostinger does the rest. The AI even offers personalized suggestions on layout, design, and content. Bring your new idea to life by heading to hostinger.com/girlsinmarketing and use the exclusive code girlsinmarketing for 10% off your plan. What's stopping you? I also don't think work is the same as it used to be, like years ago. You know, the traditional 9 to 5 kind of still exists in a way, but people do other things that are seen as work that aren't directly being in an office. And I think definitely the whole work from home kind of thing that's come in now, obviously post 2020 and everything that's gone on, I think working from home definitely blurs the lines a lot more for work-life balance, you know, kind of logging off and shutting your laptop on a, Thursday or a Friday and saying, okay, well, now it's the weekend.
Weekend starts now.
Yeah, it's so much different than it used to be, a few years ago. And I think obviously the new generation of people who are coming into the workplace now, I think are going to struggle even more with that work-life balance, because if you are maybe fully remote or you are, hybrids or whatever, it is so difficult, because I find myself doing it. I'll be working from home and I am building a business and I do probably work, stupid hours sometimes, but I do actively say to myself, no, I'm actually just going to, as you said, Kira, depends what's going on in your life. I'll say, right, I'm actually just going to work what time works for me this week. But then I'll kind of log in and I'll be on, and then I'll think, oh God, it's 8 p.m. because you're working from home, so you're not even you're probably looking at the clock and whatever, but for me, I'm if I'm really focused in on something. But then I think work-life balance for me means that if that does happen, that I don't say to myself, I don't say, oh God, tomorrow I need to still get up and start work again at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever, because I've worked till 8, 9, 10. Work-life balance, I think if you've got that flexibility within the work that you're doing, whether it's the workplace that you're at, whether it's the fact that you're self-employed or building business or wherever you are in your kind of career, I think if you've got that flexibility to be actually I worked quite late last night, I'm gonna take the morning or whatever, I think that's a good thing, and that is part of that work-life element. So just because you're not logging off at 5 o'clock and saying, okay, that's the end of my work life right now today, I don't think that you should kind of think of yourself for that, because I think I'm not really a morning person, just gonna put it out there for everyone. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a night owl either, which is a bit strange. I feel like I'm more morning than I am night. But for me, I don't go up every day at 5 a.m. It's just not something. I know at the moment you are getting up at 5:30, Kira, and I really respect that.
I'm trying to. Trying to do a 5:30 routine.
If that's if that's what you want to do, as you say, that's fine. I'm not really a morning person. I know that if I get up at between 6:30 to 7, I am ready to go for the day, especially 7, because I don't normally go to bed till about 12ish, and I need at least 7 hours sleep to properly function, even if I've had coffee and stuff like that. And I think that for me, if I'm working till 10 or 11, then I'll get up a little bit later, because that kind of suits me. And I think it's just that work-life balance in acknowledging that as well. But obviously I do understand that there is that privilege there. Not everyone does have that privilege of working from home or, doing kind of whatever they want. But I think now more than ever, workplaces are a lot more flexible in allowing you to kind of be flexible with time and stuff like that.
Yeah, and following on from that, I was going to say, I feel like we do need to acknowledge and understand that your brain is not going to be switched on at the optimal times. As you said, you might not feel it in the morning. Loads of people suffer with an afternoon slump. What is the point of sitting and looking at a screen if you're not going to do anything? Then frustrate yourself because you're not doing it and then feel worse about yourself. Obviously, we are very lucky that you do understand that and we have that. But I think people just need to understand that. But I think for work-life balance, for me, it's about boundaries. Like you said, I feel like sometimes I'm just right, I've got to put my phone away now. No, I need to go out on a run. I need to go and get some fresh air. I think it is just a lot about routines and habits. But again, like you said, it does depend on what you're doing, whether you're busy, whether you've got plans.
And I think it's just understanding yourself as well, isn't it? Like understanding whether you are a night person or whether you are a morning person or whether just what type of person you are as well. Because, and I think as well, it's not always listening to these people who say, this is what you need to do to achieve a perfect work-life balance, because it's like, right, great, that works for you, but it's not going to work for everyone. And it's like, I do think sometimes if you're taking advice from like someone who's saying this is how you achieve work-life balance, you do have to be careful with it, because I think sometimes people will say get up at 5 a.m. Sometimes people will say like don't work in the mornings. Like it's just what works for you, and it's all relative. So I think it's just understanding that, and also that therefore understanding that, but not comparing yourself to other people. I think also you've got to understand from like a work-life balance. I know you just said then like maybe like working till 8 p.m. works for you on some days, but if doing that work until 8 p.m. is gonna allow you to get that work done, and you would be sat there thinking you should be doing that work anyway, it's taking up the mental capacity anyway. So it's kind of like that is helping you then switch off for the rest of the evening. So therefore it's like, should you just get it done anyway and take it off your mental load? So I think it's just what works for you, and then just seeing kind of what you can take out of your mental capacity. Because I feel so guilty sometimes for like thinking, oh, like work-life balance, I have to switch off at 5 p.m. and then I'll be thinking, actually, I could just get that done, and then for the evening I'd feel a bit better because I've got that done almost, you know what I mean? So I think it is hard to achieve, and hard when people are constantly saying, here's what you should do, here's what you should do.
I also think that this could potentially be not controversial, but I don't at all agree with that saying of like, when you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Because I think like, at the end of the day, no matter how much you love what you do, you are still working. Like, I understand the sentiment, you know, if you enjoy your job, it's less kind of like of a burden. But having said that, I do think that can be something that plays into it. Like if you hate your job, if you hate where you work, if you don't get on with the people, if you don't like the culture, if they're really not flexible, you know, as much as I'd love to sit here and say, you know, they need to make change, like it's not always going to happen. So as best as you can, if you can try and find a job, a career, an industry, a company that you love to work for, or that you at least don't mind going to work for, and you feel fulfilled, and you know it's not something that you dread getting out of bed for, I think that does help you find a work-life balance. Even though you might be working the same 9 to 5 hours 5 days a week as you would be in another organisation, I don't think you would necessarily crave that need for, you know, more time away from work that you would if you were working somewhere really toxic. I think that sometimes people get into a position where they're like, I need a better work-life balance, when, like I said earlier, you know, they're working all those hours, but then they're coming away and their mind is just like really like bogged down with, you know, work drama, you know, toxicity in the workplace, too much workload on you because you're not getting support from your manager. There's not enough people to do the job. You're doing 5 people's workloads. So I think that, you know, just 9 to 5 hours is not the same in one job to another. So I think, you know, as much as we have the best of intentions of, you know, going in and doing our jobs, if it's not the right workplace for you, if it's not the right team, right organisation, maybe look at going elsewhere. And I also think having a really clear understanding of what life looks like for you. I think that sometimes it's a case of like, you know, we crave that time away from work, but then when you do have it, you don't use it like as well as you could. And that doesn't necessarily mean you've got to be out hiking or you've got to be doing something really like, you know, active or, you know, cramming your time full of activities. Because I think sometimes that can be counterproductive because you feel like you've got to do those things. So you cram them in and then you feel more burnt out. But just really understanding what like a fulfilled life looks like for you and doing that will help you feel like you have a better work-life balance as well. So I think that kind of prioritising things is important.
Yeah. Hiring my first team member was both exciting and daunting. It marked a shift from being a solo entrepreneur to an employer. And with that shift came new responsibilities, especially understanding the importance of employers' liability insurance. So, what exactly is employers' liability insurance? In simple terms, it's a legal requirement for UK businesses that have employees. This insurance protects your business if an employee gets injured or becomes ill because of the work they do for you. When I hired my first team member, I knew I was responsible for their well-being at work, and that's a big responsibility. Employers' liability insurance was not just a legal necessity, it became my peace of mind, ensuring that my team and my business were protected. Kingsbridge Insurance is a sponsor of today's episode, and they understand the unique challenges that we face when businesses grow. The employer's liability insurance is specifically designed for small businesses and startups. If you're at that exciting stage of hiring your first employee or planning to expand your team, I encourage you to learn more about employer's liability insurance. You can find out more about the packages Kingsbridge offer by visiting their website, kingsbridge.co.uk. Now, let's dive back into the episodes. Yeah, I mean, I totally relate to that as well, because I think life as well as the work stuff that we obviously have covered and talk about, I think there's so much pressure in like the life element. It's like, if you're not working, it's like, well, why aren't you hiking up a mountain? Like, why aren't you
taking up a new sport?
Yeah, why aren't you going swimming? Like, why aren't you doing all these things? And sometimes like I feel pressure, but not necessarily from like a work sense, but from like a life sense.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's like doing these things, and you'll look on like Instagram stories and like someone's like been up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, went for a hike, now they're having a coffee with like their friends, and then later on they're gonna do Pilates and they're gonna like do all these different things. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, like this is a lot.
But that might feel like a work day for you. So you're like, actually, no, that's not for me.
And I think life isn't, I mean, deep, but life isn't the same for everyone. And I think, as you said, Amy, it depends what your idea of life looks like. And I know as well, a lot of it, again, what you said about boundaries and stuff, I know what like a weekend should look like for me, because I've kind of like learned how to do that. And I think for me, like a weekend, for example, I like to do one day with like doing something and then another day that's more slower. So like on a slower day, I'd maybe go for a walk, maybe get a coffee or, you know, something like that, or even have just like a pajama day and watch films. And on like an activities day, I do like to maybe see family and like do all of these different things. And sometimes I feel burnt out from life if I do 2 like activity days at the weekend. You know, this weekend I have kind of had like 2 activity days, and as much as I love like doing things with friends and family, and you know, life is too short and you've got to obviously make room for everyone, I still feel like now it's Monday and I've spent the weekend like kind of doing like life, if that makes sense. So I think it's, again, understanding what your preference is and trying to do that. I've said to myself, like from like a life perspective, that I was like adding loads of stuff into my diary all the time, like saying, oh yeah, I'll see like friends. But now I'm like, actually, I'm just going to have like maybe one catch up a week with like a certain friend. I don't have that many friends, so it doesn't take up too much of my diary. But like, I like that because that means that I don't have to. A few weeks ago, I had like 4 catch-ups in my diary, and it just with friends, so like a life thing, but it felt like work. Because I was like, oh gosh, like I've got to see someone on Monday, go for lunch on Monday, doing this on Wednesday, doing that on Thursday, and then it feels like I'm packing my work week, but then I'm equally packing my life week, and it just doesn't work for me. But if it works for you, amazing. But I think it's just knowing those kind of yourself and like knowing those boundaries and stuff.
I think it is very cliche, but you have got to recharge your social battery, guys. I definitely do. I feel like also how many times I get to the end of the day in the office and I'm like, oh, gotta go for a run now. And I might sound miserable about it, but I know that that is only going to better me and help me go to sleep and have better routines. I am quite an old person, I would say. Like, I do like to just go home and get in bed and read my book. But I do like feel like that. I mean, a few weeks ago, I went out 2 nights in a row, and the week was just not. I was too tired, too much.
Yeah, 2 runs in a row, just not the one. No, I feel like I feel like work-life balance is different for everyone. So I think that's kind of what we've kind of got to in this episode. But I feel like I was going to say then, how would you recommend other people? But I think we can't recommend other people because it's literally just being a hypocrite to what we've just said. Like, you can't take other people's advice all the time because you're not the same person. So what works for you might not work for someone else.
Yeah, it's so personal to you and your circumstances, isn't it? So it's just whatever works for you.
I think a big thing, if I was going to say anything like as a takeaway from like kind of what we've all said, is just figure out what works for you. And also don't kind of kick yourself if you're in like a different phase of your life. Like, obviously everyone's at different phases in their life and their career. And I think just figure out what works for you, figure out what you want to do and then kind of run with that, because there's no, productivity guru that can tell you how to live your life. You're the best person. You live it every day and you know yourself better than anyone else. So, yeah. And that's a wrap on another team episode. Before you forget, we'd love to make this a two-way conversation. Feel free to share your opinions on this episode with us on social media by tagging Girls in Marketing. If you did enjoy listening to our team chat about marketing, please follow and leave a review of the podcast so we can continue to grow and share more episodes like this one. Your support really does go a long way. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode, but until then, join in the conversation on social media. See you next week.